changed, but the blood is still the same. Everything will break, everything will break. If it's fire, if it's rain, everything is grace. We can't run together if we're lost from the start. Wait on me, brother, run at my pace. If we're not together, we'll be lost in the dark. Walking on water, falling in faith. I still need you, Father, trusting in this great unknown. I still need you, Mother, comfort me until we're home. I still need you, sister.
Welcome, everybody. This is City on a Hill Community Church. We're so glad you made it out this morning. If you guys are in the back, come up to the front. Get comfortable. If you're sitting, standing, let's get ready to sing this morning.
And
of the truth that you were holding tighter still to me. Oh, the rock won't move and his word is strong. The rock won't move and his love can't be undone. Oh, the rock won't move and his word is strong. The rock won't move and his love can't be undone. The rock of our salvation. Hope is in the promise of your blood, my supporter within the raging flood. Even in the tempest, I can sing. I'm hidden safe in the God who never moves, holding fast to the promise of the truth that you were holding tightest still to me. Oh, the rock won't move and his word is strong. The rock won't move and his love can't be undone. Oh, the rock won't move and his word is strong. The rock won't move and his love can't be undone. The rock of our salvation. Whoa. I stand on the ground, sinking sand. The rock won't move. No, the rock won't move. And when darkness seems to hide his face, I rest on his unchanging grace. The rock won't move. No, the rock won't move. And on Christ the solid rock I stand over the ground, the sinking sand. The rock won't move. No, the rock won't move. And when darkness seems to hide his face, I rest on his unchanging grace. The rock won't move. No, the rock won't move. No, the rock won't move and his word is strong. The rock won't move and his love can't be undone. Thank you, Lord. The rock won't move and his word is strong. No, the rock won't move and his love can't be undone. The rock of our salvation. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The rock of our salvation.
Well, good morning. Welcome to church today. So good to see you. So glad that you're here. And glad that I'm here and that I'm awake. My wife and I had a baby boy 2 weeks ago tomorrow, which is great. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. And as we were singing that song, we were singing about this solid rock that we stand on, right? And how when life is crazy, when life is chaotic, that God is there, that God is working, that God is solid. And I feel very unprepared in my life right now, right? I think that's normal. When Lauren's water broke, I was in Cincinnati when it happened. So it's like, oh, okay. And having to figure everything out. And Russell, our son's name, was born 3 weeks early. So we weren't really prepared. Like, we knew that was always a possibility, but we weren't really prepared. We didn't have things set up. We didn't have things ready to go. And it was just life flipped upside down. And it's been that way since. But the cool part is that when you are surrounded by quality people, and when you surround yourself with people who also are connected to God and connected to Jesus Christ, and when you are surrounded by people who care for you, this is the importance of quality friendships and quality relationships, that people pick you up, and people are there for you, and people are helping you. And it's wonderful to have, first, the church family that we have, because many of you have already brought us meals, and many of you have already been to our house and have been helping us, and I can't tell you how thankful we are for that. And many of you have just sent us messages and said, hey, we're thinking about you, we're so happy for you, and all those sort of things. And I've been thinking to myself the whole time, it's like, man, it would be awful to not have the people in our life that we have. And it would be awful to not serve the God that we serve, who provides when we are not prepared. That's the opportunity that we have with the God that we have, and the church that we have, and the community that we have. So we should be thankful for what we have. We should be thankful for this community, and we should protect this community. Value it, lift it up, and don't take it for granted. And if you grew up in the church and you know what I'm talking about, if you grew up in the church and you walked away and you've come back, you know what it's like to not have this sort of a community. It is a special, special, special thing. Don't ever forget it. I've been reminded of that, and I'm thankful for that. So hopefully you feel like you are standing on solid ground. If you don't feel that way, God is always working, I promise you. We're going to invite the ushers forward, and we're going to receive our morning tithes and offerings, and we want to thank you for your generosity and for your giving. And we want to continue to worship throughout the whole service. Remember, worship isn't just singing songs, but worship is everything that we do in our life, everything that we represent, everything that we are. That is worship. Amen? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just give you everything. We give you our all. We give you our life. We thank you for the community that you have provided for us. And we pray that this community continues to grow, that we can continue to welcome more and more people into your loving embrace. We pray that we can be a force in this community where people know that this is a safe haven, that this is a group of people who care about others, who lift others up, who work together to say, we're not walking through this life alone, but instead we're walking hand in hand trying to figure everything out, supporting each other, loving each other. God, you are the example of what that really looks like. Thank you for your consistency in the midst of chaos, and in the midst of feeling like we aren't prepared. God, you are a good God. We pray for the morning tithes and offerings we're about to receive. Use it to further your kingdom. Help us, God, to never take our eyes off of you, but instead remain focused in on what you have called for us. We love you, God. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Everybody said, as we receive our morning tithes and offerings, you may take a seat. Well, good morning. Good morning. So glad to see all of you. Oh, we got hands waved in the back. Oh, my wife's here. Cool. Hi. She's here with Russell. I was like, what's going on back there? And Anna's back. Hey, Anna, back from college. Good to see you. Great. So, hey, we're in the third week of our Stranger Things series, and before I start today, I want to give just a disclaimer for the sermon today. We sent out an email during the week just letting you know this, but today we're talking about some very adult-themed things. We are talking about the story of Judah and Tamar. If you don't know it, then you're gonna hear a lot about it. But I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. I don't really see any kids or anything in here, I leave it up to your discretion as parents what you would like. But we're going to talk about some very adult-themed things and some very crazy things. So just wanted to give you a heads up and make sure that you were aware of that before we dive in. But we've been in the middle of our series, Stranger Things, and honestly, I've been sad to not be able to preach the last couple of weeks because this is a series I was really looking forward to doing. I knew I was going to be gone 2 weeks ago, but last week I wasn't prepared to be gone then. But Josh and Pastor Lene have done a phenomenal job filling in for me, and Anthony has done a great job helping out and filling in and making sure that everything is good the last couple of weeks that I've been gone, so I'm very thankful for them. I say that every time that I'm gone, but I want to make sure that I always recognize how great of a staff that we have and how hard they work and all the wonderful things. You know this, it's not news to you, but I just want to make sure that I publicly recognize them. So they did a great job, but I'm actually a big fan of the show Stranger Things. How many of you watch Stranger Things? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you do not watch it? Raise your hand. Okay, that's fine. We're not actually talking about the show at all. We're just using the theme behind it. So if you've been here the last couple of weeks and you've already figured that out. But I've had a few people come up to me and say, "Are you going to be showing like clips from the show and stuff like that?" Because they were worried that it was going to be too scary. No, we're not. We're not showing any clips or anything like that. We're really just doing what we're doing is we're just talking about the strange things in the Bible. Because if you grew up in church or if you grew up reading the Bible, then you already know that this is a really, really weird book and a really strange book. Actually, it's a book of books, 66 books throughout the whole Bible. And there are a lot of strange things throughout this book. It's weird stuff all throughout the Bible that we don't often talk about. A lot of times when we think of like the strange stories in the Bible, we're like, okay, we just don't want to touch that right now. We don't often preach about the weird things that happen or the difficult things to wrap our mind around because it's easier to preach about how much God loves us. It's easier to preach about like Noah and the ark. It's easy to preach about like Jesus and the life of Jesus, which really, if you don't know this, every sermon is about Jesus in some way or another. It always points to Jesus. But we wanted to take this month to talk about some weird stories in the Bible because I thought it'd be fun. And I thought that it would be cool to talk about some stuff that we don't have to talk about. So the first week, Josh talked about the life of Samson, which you've heard the life of Samson before. But he talked about some weird things in his life and the drama involved in it, which is a really, really unique story. And then last week, Pastor Lene talked about the relationship between King David and his children. And we know a lot about David, but we don't often talk about the relationship that he has with his children, mainly Absalom. And that's a whole crazy story in and of itself. So you can go and check those out. Actually, when Josh preached, we didn't have the live stream, so sorry about that. But last week, you could check out Pastor Lene's story. So today, we're going to talk about maybe the craziest story throughout the entire Bible. This one is like completely out there. And it's one of the weirdest, most dysfunctional stories that I've come across, not just in the Bible, but just in general. It is a strange thing. I mean, it's absolutely insane. This story has everything needed for really like a good episode of Maury or something like that. Like this is a good episode of like Jerry Springer. This is the story that you would look at. This would be great reality TV in our world today, because it's such a wild thing. But this story is also very risque, okay? There's a lot of like sexual things in this story. There's a lot of wild things in this story. And we don't often like to talk about this story in church because it's uncomfortable. And if you know the story, then you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you're like, what are we getting ourselves into today? And that's okay. That's okay. It's going to be a good opportunity for us. So if you don't like what I'm talking about today, don't get mad at me, get mad at the Bible. Because it's in here. This isn't a story that I've created or a story that I've made up. If this story makes you uncomfortable, then don't read the Bible, because it's straight out of here. I'm not giving you anything that isn't from here. But there's so much happening in this story that we're really just going to dive right in. What I love about this story is I don't need any catchy personal story of my own. I don't need to give you any specific illustrations. I don't need to give you any sort of story to catch your attention before I get into the scripture. This story has enough of it in its own. See, oftentimes when I preach, what I try to do is grab your attention in the beginning, right? That's what we want. We want you to be hooked in the beginning. So I may share a funny story or a personal story or whatever it may be to try to get your attention. I don't need to do that today at all, because this story is just that insane, and I hope that I'm not building it up too much. But today we're talking about the story of Judah and Tamar, and it's found in Genesis chapter 38. So I'm going to set some things up. Stick with me. I promise you that it'll be worth it in the end. Okay, so just to set some things up, one of the main people in the story is named Judah. And Judah is the grandson of Abraham. If you know anything about the Old Testament, Abraham is a really, really important figure in the Old Testament. He's like the grandfather of everything. But he's the great-grandson, Judah is a great-grandson of Abraham. So Abraham had Isaac, Isaac had Jacob, Jacob had Judah, and 11 other brothers. If you've ever gone and seen the play Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, Judah is one of the brothers of Joseph. And Judah is not really a good person in the story of Joseph, or really in this story. Judah and his 10 other brothers were jealous of Joseph. If you grew up in church, you know the story, but just to recap, we've got to make sure we know where we're at. Judah and his 10 other brothers were extremely jealous of Joseph because Joseph was his father's favorite. So they decide to take matters into their own hands. They go about and they say, okay, they trick Joseph, they capture him, they have him in a hole, and they're deciding what to do with him. They really want to just eliminate Joseph so that he wasn't their father's favorite anymore. They were just sick and tired of it. Joseph also didn't play his cards right exactly, because he had a dream that everybody else would be bowing down to him and that he would be in charge of everybody, including his brothers. And if you have any siblings, that doesn't sit very well with your siblings. And so Joseph told his brothers that they're just sick and tired of him. They're sick and tired of him getting all the greatest presents and being their dad's favorite. Sick and tired of it. So they say, we're taking him out. They capture him, they hide him, and they did something that many siblings have thought about doing to their brother or sister, but many have not actually followed through with, and they sold Joseph into slavery. They just sold. How many times have you, as a kid, been like, I just want to sell my sibling. Just get rid of them. I'm just done. I'm just going to take them, and highest bid gets them, or her. And that's exactly what they did. But they go back to their father Jacob, and they tell their father Jacob that Joseph's dead, that he was eaten by an animal, and they bring back his coat, and they cover it in some blood, and they say, we don't know what happened to him. He's gone. He's dead. There's nothing that we can do. But, however, Judah, in this story, says something that shows the type of person that he really is. He shows his character behind all this. So at this point, they have Joseph captured, and all the brothers are discussing, what should we do with him? Should we just kill him? And that's what they're about to do. And then Judah speaks up. And this is what he says. It'll be on the screen. What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. He at the end there, he's kind of trying to make it seem like he's not a terrible guy. I mean, after all, he's our brother, our own flesh and blood. But really, his motivation is not to protect his brother. His motivation here is, if we kill him, we don't even get anything. Instead of killing him, let's make some money off of him. So it's even worse. Not only does he not care about his brother, not only is he extremely selfish, Not only is he not thinking about anybody else whatsoever, but he is sending Joseph away, and he is more concerned about getting even more for himself. What will we gain if we kill him? He'll just be dead then. Why don't we sell him and get some money for him? I mean, this comment is just absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous. He's playing it off as if he's not a monster. But in reality, he's just trying to get more and more and more and more for himself. That's the character of this person. That's the character of this person that we're talking about. A real stand-up sort of guy who's looking out for others. Not at all. Instead, he's thinking about himself and himself only. So after Judah and his brothers sold Joseph into slavery, Judah then leaves his brothers and he goes out by himself and he marries a Canaanite woman. Now this is a big deal for the culture at this time. Because if you remember, Judah is a great-grandson of Abraham. And God promised Abraham that there would be many nations following him. And that it's important for his descendants to stay within the Israelites. To stay within their group of people. And so for him to go out and to marry a Canaanite woman is a big deal. And it just continues to show how selfish he actually is. And here's the reason why. Because the Canaanite people did not have the same beliefs as Judah and his people. Not at all. And this is a really, really difficult thing because, if you are in a relationship and you have an entirely different set of beliefs as the other person, you know how difficult that is. It's so hard. Because if following Jesus is the most important thing in your life, and you align yourself with another person where that is not the most important thing in their life, there's a conflict of interest there. And it makes it really, really difficult. And there will be problems down the road. Guaranteed. So Judah goes out, marries a Canaanite woman. And as we've already established, Judah is just reinforcing the fact that he's just extremely selfish. So Judah goes on to have 3 boys. First one, the oldest one was named the second one was named Onan, and the third one was named Shelah. I don't know if I'm pronouncing them right, but that's what we're going with. Okay? So Judah then finds a wife for his oldest son. And this woman's name is Tamar. So this is the other important person in our story. We got Judah and we got Tamar. Tamar is Judah's daughter-in-law. That's the relationship here. And at this point, everything just gets absolutely insane and absolutely crazy. So in Genesis chapter 38, we're going to start by reading verses 6 through 11. It'll be up on the screen. So Judah has 3 sons, and then he finds his oldest son a wife. It says this: Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight. So the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, "Lie with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as a brother-in-law to produce offspring for your brother." So here's part of the culture at the time. If your older brother died and he had a wife, it was then the responsibility of the younger brother, the next in line, to then take his brother's wife as his own to continue the family line, to have more offspring. Because it's important that the family line follows through the oldest son. Okay, you follow me? Now, I'm going to read a verse that I had never thought I would read up on stage in a sermon. Here's what happened. Don't get mad at me. This is what the Bible says. Verse 9. But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So whenever he lay with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from producing offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in the Lord's sight. So he put him to death also. Judah then said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Live as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up." For he thought he may die too, just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. Okay, let's recap. Dies because he's evil. In other words, he's a jerk. In other words, he's not following God. In other words, you don't want to be his friend. He's not somebody that you could trust. He's just a terrible person. So is completely evil. He dies. Onan then has to take Tamar as his wife, which is his responsibility that he does not want. And he doesn't really want to do this, so he does something that I cannot believe is actually written in the Bible. And God doesn't like this, and now he dies. I mean, at this point, it's like, hide your wife, hide your children, hide everybody. God's killing everybody out here right now. It's not safe. This is a dangerous place. And God's just taking names and going to town, right? But these people are not good people. They're evil people. They're selfish people. They're going down a road that they should not be going down. And Judah's like, okay, forget this. I'm not giving my third son to this woman. She has to be the problem. She's the one. What's the common denominator between my two kids? It's this girl. It's this woman. There's something wrong here. I don't know if she's like putting some spells on him. I don't know if she's like a voodoo witch doctor. I don't know what's happening, but she is not getting my third kid. There's no way, because he'll probably die too if he goes and marries Tamar. So what we see here is something that is really important about Judah, is that he's a hypocrite. And what hypocrites do is they always point blame elsewhere. They see something that's wrong. They see something that's a problem. And they place blame anywhere but themselves. You see, Judah's kids are evil. They're not good people. They're not people really to be trusted. And Judah has gone through his life with an arrogant, selfish attitude over and over and over and over again. Everything he's done in his life has been about himself. Me, I. How can I get what I want? How can I do what I want? How can I think about myself? I don't care what damage it does to anybody else. I'm thinking about myself. He sells his brother into slavery. He marries a Canaanite woman. He has kids who are evil, and they probably learned a whole lot of that evilness from their father. Probably. Yet, when bad things happen to Judah, it's not my fault. I'm not the one to blame. Tamar is the one. She's the one who's the problem here. She's the one who we have an issue with. She's the one who is causing everybody to die. There's no ownership whatsoever for his life and for the decisions that he's made and for the way that he has raised his family and the way that he has raised his kids. Instead, he compounds everything by the way he then treats his daughter-in-law, who is not the problem here. She has not caused his oldest two sons to die. They've died because of their decisions and because of their evilness, likely learned from their father. So at this time, women already didn't have a lot of rights. This was not a good time to be a woman in this culture. But a widow, where two of her husbands have died, and now she has been sent back to her own parents as an outcast, that person has zero rights. Like, even lower in the societal class. Lower. I mean, this is an awful thing for Judah to do to Tamar. Because when you marry into another family as a woman at this time, you are then a part of that family. As it is in our culture today, you are a part of the family that you marry into. For Judah to send her back to her parents is just an awful thing to do. A miserable thing to do. She now is a complete outcast in life and in this world. A complete outcast. And Judah does this with zero remorse. Doesn't care. He doesn't care about her whatsoever. He doesn't care about what this is going to do to her or how this is going to impact her life. He just says, I'm getting you out of here. Because I care more about myself than I care about you. I care more about what I like than I do about you. You're gone. Kicks her out. Yet, Judah is now a little bit further in the story. Eventually, his wife dies, his Canaanite wife. And Genesis tells us that he grieved for her, but not for very long. Actually, he ends up going to, it says, after he grieved for her for a bit, then he ends up going to a sheep shearing festival, which sounds innocent, right? If you read that in Genesis, you're like, oh, was it like the Renaissance festival? Like what? I don't know what that means. Sounds fun. I don't know, getting blankets? I don't know how this works. But actually, a sheep shearing festival in the Canaanite culture is a pagan festival that is filled with excessive booze and a lot of sex. That's what it is. It's a giant party. So his wife dies, grieves for her for a little bit. We don't actually know how long he grieved for her. It may have been longer. It may have been short. He may have been like, all right, I'm free. And then he just goes, I don't know exactly what his reaction was. I wouldn't be surprised if it were that, considering his past and what he has shown to be true about himself. But he says, all right, I'm going to go to this party. I'm going to go to this festival. I'm just going to have a good time. I'm going to let loose. I'm going to unwind. I'm going to have fun. That's the attitude of Judah at this time. Tamar, his daughter-in-law, who he sent away back to her parents, receives word that Judah is going to this sheep shearing festival. And at this point, she's been sent away. And remember, he said to her, hey, when my third son gets old enough, then you can marry him. That's just an excuse. He doesn't actually mean that. Because at this point in the story, his third son is old enough. And he should take Tamar as his wife. But it hasn't happened yet. And so at this point, Tamar's like, I'm just stuck here with no choice, with no rights, with nothing in my life. I have to make a difference. I have to do something about this. So she decides, all right, I'm going to find my father-in-law, and I'm going to stop him. She has this master plan that she puts together. So in Genesis chapter 38, verses 13 through 19, if you thought the story was bad so far, don't worry, it gets worse. Okay? Starting at verse 13. When Tamar was told, your father-in-law is on his way to Timnah to shear his sheep, she took off her widow's clothes, covered herself with a veil to disguise herself, and then sat down at the entrance of Anaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that though Shelah had grown up, which is the third son of Judah, she had not been given to him as his wife. When Judah saw her, he thought that she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. Not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, he went over to her by the roadside and said, come now, let me sleep with you. And what will you give me to sleep with you, she asked. I will send you a young goat from my flock, he said. And you will give me something as a pledge until you send it, she asked. He said, what pledge should I give you? Your seal and its cord and the staff in your hand, she answered. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. After she left, she took off her veil and put on her widow's clothes again. So you mean to tell me that Tamar's master plan is to sleep with her father-in-law? Ugh. That's her plan. Like, I got to figure something out. I'm not just going to sit on the sidelines anymore. I'm going to go pose as a prostitute, and sure enough, here comes Judah walking down the road and decides, hey, let me go and talk to this person. Eventually, word gets back to Judah that Tamar is pregnant and that she's been living as a prostitute. And his reaction is extremely hypocritical. Remember, he does not know that he slept with Tamar. He has no idea. I don't know what's wrong with him. I don't know how, but he does not know that the woman that he slept with was actually his daughter-in-law. So check out his reaction in verse 24 through 26 when he hears that she's pregnant. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law, Tamar, is guilty of prostitution. And as a result, she is now pregnant. Judah said, bring her out and have her burned to death. As she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. I am pregnant by the man who owns these, she said. Remember, in the passage that we just read, she said, hey, give me your seal and your cord and your staff. She still has these things. So she says, as she was brought out, I am pregnant by the man who owns these. And she added, see if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are. Judah recognized them and said, she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah, and he did not sleep with her again. Oh, thank you, Judah, for not sleeping with her again. So, this just completely changed Judah. I mean, all of his hypocrisy comes to a head and is finally revealed to him, where he then is forced to look it in the eye, to recognize it, and forced to face it and handle it. See, when most of us are caught in sin, it's easy to dig our heels in the sand and dig a bigger hole than what we are already in and say, no, it's not my fault. No, I didn't actually do it. No. And we come up with all these excuses and we dig our heels in the sand and we say, no. I'm not to be blamed here. That's what our initial reaction is. That's what our first reaction is. No, it's not my fault. But Judah does have a different reaction. He does recognize after it's revealed to him. See, because his first reaction, when he found out that Tamar was pregnant, he says, bring her out and let's have her burned to death. Now, I know that Bible times are crazy, but burning people to death was not a normal practice for the culture. I mean, this is extreme. Really extreme, even for Bible times. It was not normal to burn somebody to death. It was normal to stone somebody to death. It was normal to execute a person, but burning them to death is not a normal thing. So for him to be that upset when he finds out she's been a prostitute and she's now pregnant, when all along he's been sleeping with prostitutes. He just went to a sheep shearing festival where there was a lot of sex and a lot of booze and a lot of alcohol and a lot of crazy things happening. All along, that's the lifestyle that he was living. But when he hears that his daughter-in-law is living that lifestyle and she's pregnant, we have to burn her to death when he's doing it. I mean, it's wild. It's wild when we actually think about his reaction here. And Tamar knew that this would be his reaction. That's why she kept the things that she kept. When she sends him back, and Judah is faced with his sin, with his hypocrisy, sometimes we have to get to a place in life where we hit rock bottom. Sometimes we have to get to a place in life where there's no other option to acknowledge how we've fallen short, to acknowledge the ways that we need to change. Sometimes that needs to happen in order for us to get our own arrogant, selfish desires out of the way. Sometimes we need to be broken before we can turn around. And that's okay. It's okay. If that's what it takes, now this is a scary prayer to pray, but if it takes us being broken before we can get better, then God, break me. Break me. That should be our prayer. Whatever it takes, God, for me to change. If you're struggling with an addiction, if you're struggling with a sin, if you're struggling with whatever it is, I don't know what's going on in your life, but whatever it is that you're dealing with, that you know is wrong, that you know is a sin, that you know needs to change, and you just can't seem to get over that hump, pray to God and say, God, break me. Do whatever it takes. It won't be fun. It won't be enjoyable. But I promise you, it will be worth it. God, break me. I don't want to live this life anymore. Judah is brought to his knees in embarrassment. Completely embarrassed in front of people. Remember, he just made this whole act. Let's burn her. She deserves to die. And he's the one who is the father of these kids because she's pregnant with twins. He's the father. But Judah shows us that even the worst person has the opportunity to change. Even the worst person. Because what he says is, she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah. So let's recap all that Judah's done. Sold his brother into slavery, married a Canaanite woman against his family's wishes, raises sons who are evil, abandons Tamar and sends her back to her family with nothing and with no hope, unknowingly sleeps with Tamar thinking that she was a prostitute, is upset with Tamar for being a prostitute and then getting pregnant, wants to literally burn her to death, and then discovers that he is the one who got Tamar pregnant. That's his story up to this point. This is strange. This is wild. Absolutely weird. If you saw this on TV, you'd be like, that's not, it's all fake. That would be my first reaction. But do you know what happens with Judah after this? After this interaction? He returns back to his family. And he starts to get his life back in order. Eventually he goes back to his family because he's all of his brothers, remember, his father's Jacob, he's got his 10 brothers, and now there's another son that's born, his name is Benjamin. Joseph, his original brother, was sold into slavery, and that's a whole nother story that I'm sure that you've heard, but eventually, from slavery, Joseph, his life constantly goes like this. He eventually gets to a place where he is leading all of Egypt. He's like second in command of Pharaoh. He builds his life back up. I'm telling you, if you haven't read Genesis, just go through and read it. It's insane. It's wild. It's crazy stories. And so he eventually gets to a place where he is making decisions for Egypt. Judah and his brothers, when Judah goes back home, he discovers that there's a famine in the land. They're struggling for food. So their father Jacob says, hey, go to Egypt and ask for food. And who do they have to go and face? Not knowing? I guess Judah is bad with faces. I don't know what his deal is. Doesn't recognize Tamar. And then eventually, when they get to Egypt, their brother that they sold into slavery, Joseph, is leading Egypt, second in command, making very important decisions. And they have to go and ask him for food. So you're the brother that's sold into slavery. And now you get to decide what happens to those same brothers that sold you into slavery. Talk about sweet revenge. That's what I'd be thinking the whole time. The brothers show up, they don't recognize Joseph. And Joseph is like, even better. Perfect. So he sends them back and he says, okay, you got to bring your youngest brother, Benjamin, who is now Jacob's favorite. I hope I'm not losing you. I know there's a lot of names here. You got to bring him back to me because he's trying to make his brothers sweat. That's what he's trying to do. They come back. Jacob is like, please do not take Benjamin. He's way better than the rest of you. I don't want to lose him just like I lost Joseph. They say, Dad, we have no choice. And Judah steps up and he says to his dad, Dad, I promise you, I will protect Benjamin. I will not let anything bad happen to him, even if I have to lay my own life on the line. I will protect him. Talk about a turnaround. He goes from selling his brother into slavery and to doing all the terrible things that he's done that we've already talked about, to then saying, I will fight for other people. So they go to Joseph, and Joseph says, okay, I'm going to keep Benjamin. And Judah steps up, not knowing who Joseph is, says, whatever it takes, take me. Please don't take my brother Benjamin. Take me. I will lay my life down for him. And I hope you don't mind me paraphrasing all this because I just don't have time to read through all of these stories. But this is important. Judah says, take me. And what Genesis tells us is Joseph is then moved to tears by his brothers speaking up and defending Benjamin. The same Judah that we've been talking about this entire time, who's selfish, who's a jerk, who's evil, who's done everything for himself, that same guy, his life is completely changed. His life is completely turned around. Not only did Judah change, but God used Judah in amazing ways. So much so that the genealogy of Jesus, which is listed in Matthew chapter 1, do you know who one of the ancestors of Jesus? Judah and Tamar. The ancestors of Jesus are the two people in this story that are crazy, have done some insane, wild things. And from Judah sleeping with Tamar one time, and her becoming pregnant with twins, that is the genealogy of Jesus, the family line of Jesus. What that tells me is, even the worst person can change. Even the worst person can be used for good. Even the worst person that you can think of can change their life, turn their life around, and can be used. It's unbelievable. Are you a hypocrite? Are you messed up? Are you a sinner? Are you ashamed of the things that you've done in your life? You have the opportunity to make things right. You have the opportunity to change. Do what is necessary. Take the proper steps and turn your life around. If Judah can do it, you can do it. I can do it. Don't settle. Don't settle for our own selfish desires. Live in a way that says, God, break me and use me. There's nothing more important than us living our life for Jesus Christ. So I'm going to invite the worship team up as we close. And I pray that if you do feel like there are things in your life that you need to change, if you do feel that there are things in your life that you've been battling and struggling with and fighting over and over and over again, and you just can't quite get over the hump, and you just don't know what to do, start here, broken. Broken. Humble yourself. Say, God, I'm tired of living the way that I decide. It's just not working. It's just not what I want to do anymore. It hasn't helped. I just keep finding myself in the same place over and over and over again. God, change me. It starts here. If you need to pray, pray. If you need to sing, sing. If you need to get by yourself, get by yourself. Even though we're in a school cafeteria, these steps are always open as a makeshift altar. If you feel like, God, I need to be broken, come down here. If you feel that you need to be broken, but you're saying to yourself, nah, I can't go down there because it's embarrassing, then you're not ready to be broken. This is not about anybody else. This is not about the person next to you. This is about you and getting yourself right. Judah did it. He was able to overcome. Many other people throughout Scripture has done it. Many people around you have done it. You can do it too. You may feel like you're garbage. You may feel like you're trash. I'm telling you, you're not. Jesus came from the line of Judah and Tamar. You can do amazing things. I guarantee it. So if you need to come and pray, come and pray. I'll be right here in the front row. If you want to come pray with me, I'd love to pray with you. If you need to pray with the person next to you, just ask them. I promise you they'll pray with you. This is too important. Let's stand and let's sing.
Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering, it never changes what you see. I've tried to win this war, I confess, king of the fight. No matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen. So in all things, be my life and bread. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I will trust in you. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I'll go you've not already stood. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. 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 I will trust in you.
God, help us to trust you. Help us to lay our life down and say, whatever it takes, whatever it looks like, God, use me. Change me. God, I pray that you work on my heart. That it is always aligned with yours. God, I thank you that you have the ability to redeem even the darkest storm. Thank you that you have the ability to take a life that is just lost and bring it back and make us whole. So I pray that as we continue to walk through our life, and when we do fall short, help us to turn to you. God, help us to get rid of the areas in our life that are holding us back. Help us to get to a place where we say, use me. Get me out of the way. I want to live for you. Thank you that Jesus came from broken people. That his family line was just as messed up as anybody else. And it shows that you make a way and that you provide hope in the midst of destruction. I pray that we never forget that we never sell you short. But instead, I pray that we live in a way that is filled with power and trust. It says, God, you are in control, and I give everything to you. What a tremendous opportunity you give for us, oh God. We love you with our entire hearts, our entire being. Be with us as we go. Help us to not forget what you have called us to do every day of the week. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Everybody said? So before you go, I just want to let you know that today, after the service, immediately after service, we're going to pack a few things up, but we are going to have a vision meeting for Hope Community Church, which is going to be planted by our executive pastor, Pastor Lene. And we want to invite you to come, to stay, hang out. There's going to be a few snacks. It's not going to be too long, like 20 minutes. If you want to hear more about this church plan, if you want to hear more about what's happening and what we're doing, we want to invite you just to hang out, and we'll do that in a few minutes. All right, we'll see you back next week. Thanks.
All these people